The show opens up in Huanchaco, a small fishing village in Peru. As usual, a fisherman starts his day by heading out to sea with his net. After reaching his usual spot, he casts it out, hoping for a good catch, but something pulls him into the water as he tries to haul the net back in. Confused, he plunges into the water with his knife and sees the net snagged on rocks. But before he can untangle it, a swarm of fish surrounds and kills him. Over in Scotland, marine biologist Charlie Wagner struggles in the harsh weather of the Shetland Islands. Charlie is in a remote facility named The Rock to study the effects of environmental changes on marine ecology. Unhappy, she vents her frustration to Ram, a colleague at the Kiel Marine Institute. However, Ram informs that the head of the institute, Professor Lehman, has thrown her a curveball. She wants her to map the seabed with an AUV, starting 25 meters from the bottom. AUVs are autonomous underwater devices used to collect data for research. This extends her stay at The Rock by a month. Previously, her mistake led to an AUV being destroyed. Charlie knows that this is less about the data collection and more about punishing her. Unfortunately, Charlie gets a signal indicating that something is wrong near her station. She quickly takes a boat ride to the spot and finds her AUV stuck in a thick net under a buoy. She takes a deep breath and dives in the cold water. While untangling the device, she gets a spooky sensation as if something is approaching her from the darkness. Panicked, she finishes her job and quickly floats back to the surface only to find her boat drifting away. After tying the damaged AUV to the buoy, she manages to get back into her boat just before it can drift too far. In the meantime, members of the Vancouver Island Marine Institute find a dead orca washed up at a beach. There are several scars on the body which point to an altercation with humans. Leon and Jack from the Institute suspect that a fishing community nearby may have something to do with it. When they reach there, a local fisherman shows them a boat that was uncharacteristically attacked by the orca earlier that morning. He adds that the fishermen on the boat had no option but to retaliate with hooks and blades. Back at The Rock, Jess and Tomas, a technician from the Kiel Institute, arrive at The Rock to help Charlie with the damaged AUV. Tomas is surprised that the AUV stopped working so suddenly, and suspects it hadn't been set up properly in the first place. She insists that it was not her fault but is forced to take help from him. Later that night, a frustrated Charlie goes to a local bar to blow off some steam. Here she starts a conversation with a local man, Douglas, and the bartender. As a marine biologist, she describes the area to be overfished, citing the fish stock is on the verge of collapse. But Douglas turns out to be a fisherman, which makes the conversation awkward. She tries to quell the hostility by buying him a drink, and they end up spending the night together. We travel back to Vancouver where, despite the whale migration season starting, there are no sightings in the area. Leon from Vancouver Island Marine Institute is extremely worried as this may lead the local marine tourism industry to collapse. His girlfriend, Lizzie, runs a small boat that takes tourists to see the whales in open waters. She confesses to Leon that she might even have to sell her boat if the whales do not arrive soon. Meanwhile, after spending the night together, Charlie tries to sneak out to work, leaving Douglas behind. But he wakes up and she reluctantly agrees to let him come along. Although they manage to launch the AUV successfully, something else catches their eye. Several weird, spongy, white pieces of methane hydrate are floating around their boat. While it is not strange to spot a few of these, their number is unusually large. Hence, Charlie immediately records a video of the area and sends it to her institute in Kiel. Later on a video call, Professor Lehman asks her to investigate the spot further. She then reprimands Charlie for having a non-employee on the boat, as in case of an accident, the institute would have been liable for compensation. The next scene takes place in Vancouver where journalist Alicia Delaware meets with Jack from the Marine Institute. She learns that Jack was dishonorably discharged from the Navy a while ago. He was in charge of training dolphins who could clear underwater mines in the Persian Gulf during the invasion of Iraq. When the war was over, the Navy kept the dolphins locked up in small pens as they weren't habituated to open waters. Jack released them anyway and was caught doing it. The following day, Leon jumps out of his seat as he hears underwater signals indicating the whales have returned. He immediately calls Lizzie to pass on the good news. To his surprise, she informs him that whales have been sighted all along the coast at the same time. She plans to be the first boat to take the visitors out for whale sightings. Simultaneously, Leon grabs his gear and heads out to the ocean in his speedboat. A little while later, he stops the boat and begins listening to underwater signals once more. Suddenly, a huge whale surfaces nearby and stares at him for a few moments. It bizarrely swims away towards Lizzie's boat, which is bigger and has more people in it. Soon after, Leon hears the sound of multiple orcas following the whale towards the same boat at a great speed. On the other hand, the whale performs a few flips for the onlookers on Lizzie's boat. Things quickly turn dark as on its next attempt, The massive animal intentionally lands directly on the boat. It snaps in two halves and all the passengers fall into the freezing water. Horrified, Leon quickly speeds his way to the spot, but is helpless as the orcas start attacking the people in the water. He tries to help as many people as possible but is unable to save Lizzie, who is dragged down by one of the orcas. Elsewhere in Saint-Jean-de-Luz, France, we see the head chef of a restaurant pick up fresh seafood from the local market. He shares a little banter with a fisherman about the prices of lobsters, but buys them anyway. Later that night, everything is going according to schedule, and the head chef starts to clean the lobsters for dinner. However, he notices something weird under one of these creatures and turns it upside down. Without any warning, a lobster squirts a watery liquid right on the head chef's face. Startled, he asks Gilberto, a sous chef, to clean up the watery mess on the table and get rid of the lobster. Gilberto cleans the mess on the table but hands the lobster to one of the interns, who throws it down the garbage disposal system. As the night progresses, the head chef starts feeling unwell. He goes outside to get some fresh air, but starts feeling extremely nauseous and collapses to the ground. We then see him lying motionless on the ground as black blood oozes out of his mouth. The next day, we see Gilberto being admitted to a nearby hospital. Apparently, his shirt was also covered with thick, black blood similar to the head chef, who sadly passed away. We see two French doctors discussing the case, and they seem to be surprised about how quickly the symptoms start to appear. After suffering from nausea and acute diarrhea, the sous chef had to be put in an induced coma. Suddenly, one of the doctors, Cecile, gets called to her office. Cecile finds her kids in the office and immediately calls her husband, who is away on a business trip. The kids took the train by themselves from Brussels and did not inform either parent before coming to France. In the meantime, Leon from Vancouver Island Marine Institute is sitting alone at a restaurant, emotionally spent after Lizzie's death. Here, he meets an astrophysicist who is in town for a vacation with her girlfriend. They have a brief conversation about their respective professions, and she empathizes with his loss. Before he leaves for work, she hands her card and tells him to call in case he wants to talk about anything. The next scene turns our attention to Norway, where an oil and gas production company, Hovstad, has chartered a huge research vessel which is currently sailing on the Norwegian Sea. Marine scientists aboard the vessel discover a strange species of ice worms that have covered the seafloor. Unfortunately for the oil company, the exact spot is where they are looking to drill for natural gas and petroleum reserves. Hence, they summon Professor Sigurd Johansen from Trondheim University to investigate the matters further. Professor Sigurd confirms that these are ice worms, but is alarmed at how fast they are proliferating. Upon closer inspection, even more surprising facts come to light. These are a completely new species of ice worms which had never been seen in these parts before today. Unlike other deep-sea worms, these have sharp teeth that they use to dig into the seafloor for some unknown reason. Thus, he proposes that the compliance officer hired by Hovstad, Tina, refer to experts in marine biology for the follow-up process. We see that Tina and Sigurd have some romantic tension between them and may have dated in the past. She expresses her wish to continue with Sigurd on this matter, but he is clearly apprehensive. Norway has strict rules regarding offshore fracking, where drilling is only allowed if it poses no harm to the marine ecology. Sigurd knows that Hovstad Energy has a history of bending the rules around environmental clearances. Attaching his name to this project may lead to his reputation being questioned, but he reluctantly agrees. We then see Sigurd and Tina pay a visit to Professor Lehmann's lab at the Kiel Marine Institute. She is also concerned about this new species, having spotted it elsewhere as well. These worms keep going through the ice on the seafloor even though there isn't anything for them to feed on. Sigurd adds that this is normal, as several species of seaworms display a suicidal tendency to free food and space for their community. The very next day, Sigurd and Tina arrange a meeting with the board members of Hovstad, Aron and Erika. Erika keenly questions the professor to know their next course of action. The new discovery might hinder their operations, something that is made clear to them in the meeting. Sigurd strongly urges the board members to act in an environmentally responsible and conscious manner. As a result, the compliance officer proposes to charter the same vessel for another week to take more samples and determine the extent of the spread of the worms. If they are widely spread, the fracking can move ahead, but if they are concentrated only to small regions, the drilling in the area cannot be given the green light. Aron, intent on bending the rules in the company's favor, also joins this expedition. Meanwhile, in France, Dr. Cecile continues to investigate possible new cases of infections. She comes to know about the intern who threw the shady lobster into the garbage disposal, and immediately heads to her home. As she finds the intern's dead body in her apartment, Gilberto suffers a massive cardiac arrest and dies. When we travel back to Norway, the research vessel chartered by Havstad is sailing towards the same spot where they first discovered the mysterious ice worms. To Sigurd's surprise, the sea worms look bigger and have multiplied massively in number in the short span of a few days. As they begin to scrap the sample of the sea floor, their machinery immediately breaks down. Soon enough, the entire ship starts to shake and barely manages to stay afloat thanks to its massive size. Shaken from this near-disastrous event, Tina asks Sigurd to join her in an energy convention in Geneva. Earlier, Professor Lehman suggested that these worms have been seen elsewhere too. She wants his help to ascertain how others have dealt with this issue. Back at Shetland, Charlie is working late into the evening at the local pub where she once again meets Douglas. She quickly leaves a birthday message to her friend Jess, who we saw earlier in the movie, and joins the charming fisherman for a beer. In the meantime, Jess and technician Tomas are aboard a ship named Juno, somewhere off the coast of Iceland. While she records a reply video to her friend, their ship starts to shake violently. We see large ripples start to form out of nowhere, and the ship unexpectedly sinks. The next day, the news of Juno's sinking reaches Charlie, and she is left shocked. Although Coast Guards are still searching the site of the accident, she fears the worst has happened. In the coastal town of Saint-Jean-de-Luz, Dr. Cecil examines blood from the chef, the intern, and the sous chef to arrive at a shocking conclusion. She deduces that Vibrio vulnificus, a bacterium that produces toxins when it comes into contact with blood, is causing the infections. Generally, human white blood cells consume the Vibrio, hence, chances of fatality should be next to none. Before she can make sense of this complex medical situation, her colleague informs her that several people have been infected all over the town. Dr. Cecil suspects that the lobster thrown by the intern into the garbage disposal system has contaminated the water supply. Soon enough, we see that the hospital gets overrun by infected patients. Elsewhere in Geneva, Sigurd has a meeting set with a representative of Mifune Industries to convey his findings on the ice worms. These mysterious creatures could very well be a problem for Mifune Industries, who have vested interests in the shipping business. Later that night, Tina informs Sigurd that Ado Mifune, the billionaire philanthropist, will use this information to prop up his efforts in cleaning the ocean. However, the professor is more interested in reigniting the old relationship with Tina, despite knowing she has a boyfriend. Tina tries to resist but ends up giving in to her feelings and cheating on her partner. In the meantime, Leon recognizes that all the attacks on various ships till now have been in the migration path of the whales. He decides to come into action mode and get to the bottom of this mystery. Along with Jack and Alicia Delaware, he travels to the middle of the ocean where the pod of whales he tracks are asleep. Then, he dives down to the pod and places a camera on one of their backs. As he does so, the whales suddenly wake up and start acting strangely. The big mammals start moving towards their boat, but the trio manage to escape just in time. When the scene shifts back to Geneva, we see that the representative of Mifune Industries shares some information with Sigurd over the phone. Apparently, they too have found the ice worms in the South China Sea and the Nankai Trough in China. More importantly, the representative suggests that Hovstad Energy does not have a license for exploration of the Norwegian Sea. After implying that Tina lied to Sigurd, the representative then sends him a video that proves Hovstad's ill intentions. Sigurd does not disclose this information when he talks to Tina over the phone. However, he does emphasize the urgent need to go back out into the sea and survey other areas to determine the extent of the worms. On the other end of the world on Vancouver Island, Leon is alerted to the camera being taken off by the whale. He quickly retrieves it from the middle of the ocean and beelines for the Marine Institute to review the footage. In the final scene, Charlie, who has returned to clean, along with Professor Lehman and Raham, is viewing the footage from Juno's sinking. Simultaneously, Leon's whale footage is playing in parallel. At Vancouver Island Marine Institute, they see the whales dive deeper than usual toward a mysterious, illuminated entity in the depths of the ocean. In the meantime, the footage from Juno's sinking also reveals something gleaming, clasping onto the debris of the ship. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notification, and leave 1,000 likes or 100 comments if you'd like us to continue part 2. Thank you.